Today, hopefully, we will be giving you a new perspective on how to think about your immune health. This is all going to be about the cornerstones of your immune health, how to think of it as a system, how you can work some of these things into your life. Bit of a recipe there to support you as well, how to check for deficiencies that are common with depleted immune health. And we've got a little bit of some supplement recommendations excuse me, that might be helpful for you, as well as going through a Q&A at the end. So you are in the right place today if you feel like this is something that you're always struggling with, coughs and colds, flus, things like that. If you've got friends, family that you'd like to support and you want to know if there's some simple things that you can do to support yourself better. As I just mentioned at the beginning, a couple of tips for watching. Just be curious, come with an open mind, ask as many questions as you've got or that you can think of, and we will try to do our best to answer them. Can't promise we'll be able to address all of them, but we'll do our best. Think about how you might be able to apply some of these to your life, if there are any changes that you might be able to bring in that can help support you. Put any questions that you've got in the chat. Maybe use this opportunity as a bit of a mindful moment to put your mobile phone to the side, and give yourself a bit of tech-free space while you're on Zoom. That's a bit ironic, but anyway, and grab a pen and paper just in case there are any light bulb moments or things you think, oh, that's really interesting. I'll just note that down. But you will be getting a replay. So if you feel that you have to run out at any point, let the dog out, cook the dinner, collect the kids, whatever it is, answer the door. Don't worry, we've got you covered. We'll be sending you a replay, so it's all good. Okay. So I said, I'm Tina Hancocks. I'm really thrilled to be here tonight. I'm passionate about natural health and finding ways to support people in bringing back themselves into an optimal health position. I've seen the power that good nutrition has in my own health journey, and I've seen how it can affect people in clinic as well. It's absolutely fundamental. And I'm in the final year of studying naturopathic nutrition. What even does that mean? Naturopathic nutritional therapy is all about trying to find the root cause of your symptoms and disease and designing very bespoke, unique health plans to bring your body back into its optimum place and deal with particular chronic diseases and other illnesses. And I'm here tonight with Dr. Dhesi.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. I think Tina is a lot more popular than I am, so I can see a few familiar faces. So thank you so much for joining. We've got a lot to go through, and we did a run through on Sunday, and I think I spoke too much, and I'm sure those of you who are patients are well aware of how much I can speak. So I'm a GP by background, a evolving women's health specialist, obviously a cosmetic skin doctor as well. And I cannot say from a point of view of being a GP and a doctor since 2006, how embracing a more alternative view of healthcare, looking at nutrition, looking at mindset, mindfulness, how much I've learned over the past few years, and just now going through this presentation with Tina and preparing it, how much I think it's made not only impact on my practice, which I can now take to those of you who come and see me in clinic, but also for those of you watching today. I guarantee you will take something from here which will open your mind to how important nutrition is. And also we'll go over the boring conventional medical stuff as well. You know, the usual GP thing of, well, have some paracetamol, ibuprofen, or have some Lemsip and you'll be fine. I promise it'll be more enlightening than that. So thank you, Tina. I said I'd keep it short. Let's crack on.
Sonny, do you want to do this?
Yeah, of course. So why is this important? So, you know, maybe you're the person in your family that does get recurrent coughs and colds and sneezes. You know, it's one week to another where you are just feeling unwell, tired, but you just can't quite put a finger on it. Or perhaps, you know, you're looking after family members, whether it's children, grandchildren, or hubbies or partners, where every week someone seems to be unwell. And, you know, that's debilitating, and it affects the family relationship, it affects the dynamic. You don't know which way to turn. You get well and then you get unwell again. And so what we want to impart here is a bit more positivity is, you know, where do you want to be? You know, you deserve to feel well. enjoy everything that this time of year has to offer. You just do not want to be unwell when you're coming closer to Christmas. You want to be a bit more resilient. If you do get unwell, you recover from it well. Immune health is a key indicator of your overall well-being. It's something that we have lost sight of, I think, because we rely too much on the conventional, which is why we're discussing the naturopathic approach as well. And listen, everyone has the power to change. You can really make a change with just very small differences, and you'll be surprised at the little changes that you can make, the little tweaks. Remember, we are high performance. If you want to do the analogy of a car, we're all high performance engines or high performance cars. And sometimes we just sound a little bit off, and you just need that little bit of tuning. And here we are, Tina and myself, as the mechanics, to give you that knowledge to do it for yourself. So, what is the immune system? So, the immune system has lots of different faces to it, but I think what we should concentrate on is the innate and the adaptive. So, the innate immune system is what happens straight away. So myself being from an army background, I can't help but default to the fact that your innate immune system is like the foot soldiers, it's your paratroopers. It's when that itchy little feeling at the back of your throat, do you know what I mean? Or that little, the nose is running and you're like, is something coming? That's when your innate immune system kicks in. That's when those white blood cells, not necessarily antibodies, the white blood cells go in and start trying to attack and take care of the infection, the invader. Your adaptive immunity is a little bit more elegant. That's probably your cavalry, it's waiting in the reserves, it's your antibodies, it's different types of white blood cells. And they then come in later on. And that can happen up to 2 weeks later. So that's kind of starts to give you a little bit of a picture as to an immune reaction can actually be for a couple of weeks. But we're going to explore how we can tweak that and maybe compress that a little bit, or help our immune system react, but not react so that we react overall as well. So the difference we've just discussed about the innate and adaptive immune system, the key players are your white blood cells, the lymphatic system. It's more than just a network of fluid floating around. It's more than just your glands, or my glands are up. That's my lymphatic system. It has a little bit more complexity to it. And your immune responses. We're going to talk about these amazing things called cytokines, which are inflammatory markers. And of course, we've probably all heard of it, antibodies, but we're going to explore those in more detail as well. But those are the key players. So what do I commonly see in clinic? So in NHS practice, in private practice, also in cosmetic practice as well. So this graph is quite interesting. We won't go too much into it because one, it's a graph, it's numbers, and you can get lost in all the lines there. But the peak that you can see in the middle of the graph is the incidence at about winter time of cold and influenza. So the thresholds for there are very high. So what we're really showing from this graph is that the influenza incidence, the illness rates in England do spike during the winter, and that's why we're doing this. And what do we see? We see it as what we call respiratory infections, so persistent, debilitating coughs and colds. We can see it as a little bit more serious, pneumonia and influenza. So pneumonia is classed as a bacterial chest infection, but it can be caused by viruses as well. That can make you feel significantly unwell. We see that in clinic all the time, and sometimes that can involve a hospital admission. Aggravated asthma, for those of you who do suffer with asthma or have family members that suffer with asthma, you know that the dry, cold air at this time of year and the exposure to infection can make asthma worse. It's the wheezing, it's the chest tightness. My favorite that I love educating patients on, I shouldn't be smiling really because it's a serious condition, but dermatitis and skin conditions I love talking about, but I'll just rein it in for now. That's things like, dry patches on your skin, dry areas on your skin, you're putting on emollient or moisturizer and it just doesn't seem to be doing anything. And one that maybe it rears its head when it's in the news, but low mood, including seasonal affective disorder, it is a real thing. It hits the headlines now and again, but your mood can be significantly affected at this time of year. And I see it in clinic, people get more anxious, they're a bit more depressed. But again, we're going to go through ways that we can tackle this. So I'll get on my high horse about this. The key mistakes that we all make, including myself as well, is we get suckered into relying on unproven vitamins and supplements. Now, there's a lot of controversy out there, what we get over the counter, sort of on the high street, is that any good? We'll discuss that in a little bit. My favorite topic, when I was in the army, was always inadequate hand hygiene. Getting people to wash their hands frequently spreads viruses and colds, and we saw a lower incidence of that during COVID because we were all at home, and I guess we were washing our hands. It was one of the main messages from government. Ignoring early symptoms. I think a lot of us are caregivers. A lot of us, I'll put myself in there, but I'll get shot down later at some point. A lot of my patients are women, especially in private clinic, and they have so much on their hands and they tend to ignore early symptoms. And when it does hit you, it hits you hard. So that delay in seeking medical treatment. Lifestyle choices, whether it's a choice or whether it's put on you, not getting enough sleep, poor nutrition, lack of exercise, that can weaken the immune system. Even too much exercise, there is such a thing, can weaken the immune system. So let's get prepared. Let's fuel our bodies. Let's stock up on the necessary supplements and supplies, and also the knowledge as well, which we're here for.
Okay, so we are going to be going through the 8 pillars of immune health this evening. And as we've kind of alluded to already, you've probably got the picture that unfortunately there is no one magic silver bullet. So if you thought you were going to come on tonight, we were going to say, right, this is the one thing you need to do. I'm sorry to disappoint you. We're going to be talking about a full spectrum of things that all work together to basically create the foundations of your immune health and how to take a 360 approach. And we've created this little acronym here, which is winter safe, which reflects all of those and is a really helpful way for you all to remember it. So we're going to be talking about how we keep you all winter safe over these coming months. And the first one we're going to dig into is the W for water and hydration, which Dr. Dhesi is going to take you through.
So I think we take water for granted a little bit, but let's delve into why I, for example, say in clinic all the time, you look a bit dehydrated, you need to be hydrated in order to support your immune system. Well, one, it helps to produce lymph. So we've spoken about the lymph system, or the lymphatic system. It's more than a network, but what it does need is fluidity. Now millions of years ago, we're all cells or single cell or multicellular organisms in the sea. So our internal systems prefer that environment. So they need water. So one, support immune system function, and it increases the efficiency of the immune response. If you've got more flow happening, you know as well as I do that your immune system better. In some cases, that's excess production of mucus and so on. I know if anyone's eating right now, I'm sorry about that, but we need more water to increase the efficiency of the immune response. I hate the word detoxification, but then again, I still put it in the slide. Well, it refers to how our body caters to filtering out waste and toxins. So the kidneys are our filter system, and the kidneys rely on being hydrated, and the way they're hydrated is if there's plenty of circulating volume, and we get that from water. So in order to make sure that harmful substances are eliminated, including breakdown products from our immune system, we need to be hydrated. The question that probably comes to mind now is, what should we be drinking? Well, I think on average about 1.5 to 3 liters is what we always say. Sometimes that can be formula 8 glasses or 9 glasses of water. I think we need to start learning how to recognize when we're dehydrated. And one of the things I always say to patients, feel your lips, feel your mouth. If that's dry, your lips are dry, it means you're dehydrated. It means you need to drink more. And also, if you're not really visiting the toilet, again, apologies if you're eating, if you're not visiting the toilet every hour and a half, or every couple of hours, you really are not hydrated. And if what's coming out is more, in fact, we won't go into that because it's too limited, but you get what I was going with that one. Mucosal membrane health. So again, I've already mentioned it. That's referring to your lips, your mouth. If it's dry, if your eyes are dry, your nose is dry, then that means you're not hydrated enough. So that's why we want hydrated mucosal membrane health. Gives a better defense against viruses, especially viruses and bacteria. Dehydration can lead to diminished physical performance. You don't have to be exercising to know that if you're dehydrated, just your brain function decreases to an extent. And aiding digestion and nutrient absorption. It's crucial for digestion. I think Tina will go into a little bit more, but water is essential for our immune system. And winter is that kind of perfect storm time where it's cold, we don't want to drink too much, we think we're hydrated. And that's one of the reasons why we get coughs and colds, because we're not hydrated enough.
Okay, right. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit around the I, which stands for intestinal environment, so which actually really means our microbiome here, and more specifically our gut microbiome. So I'm sure that's a term that you've probably heard. You may have read about it, heard it in the news, because it is probably one of the hottest topics in research now, as we've realized that the incredible influence that this colony of bacteria that live in your intestines has with our overall health. Okay, so the gut microbiome refers to the trillions of bacteria that live happily, where it's bacteria, fungus, and archaea as well, that live together in your intestines. And but at the same time, you've also got, surprisingly, you think about 70 to 80% of your immune system cells are also located in your intestines. You think, oh, that's kind of odd, but makes sense if you think about it, because we've got a hollow tube that's running all the way from our mouth all the way to the other end. And the biggest risks that we're going to come to our body are going to be through what we ingest, either through food, we inhale, we drink. And so it kind of makes sense when you think about it, that actually the majority of our immune cells are located right next to that pipe. And so they're able to get to work as soon as they might have to. But if you think, all right, I've got trillions of bacteria sitting next to the majority of my immune cells, that sounds like it could be a potential recipe for disaster. Well, yeah, it kind of can at points, because the critical thing with this is that we're keeping it in balance, and that these two systems actually talk to each other. What we now know is they're only one cell distance apart, and they actually communicate with each other. So the immune system and the microbiome have a kind of a crosstalk that goes on, and the bacteria are able to educate the immune system on what's friend and foe, and equally the immune system is then able to recognize when things might be out of balance and it might need to mount an immune response. So it's really important that we're keeping this environment in harmony. So how do we do that? What we want is as many different kinds in there as possible. Which again sounds like, oh, really? Do I want that? Yeah, you absolutely do. You want as much diversity in there as possible. And you also want them to be in balance. We don't want 90% of the space taken up by one guy and he's bullying out the way all of the other things that are in there, because then we get this imbalance that can lead to various gut disturbances and inflammation. And that again knocks onto the immune system, where you're then getting this inflammatory immune response that can have knock-on effects throughout the rest of the body. So it's really, really important. So how do we nurture them? I've got a little bit of maths for you here. So our sum, it's very simple, is your pre plus your pro equals your post. So what does that mean? So prebiotics, which are all the really beneficial fibers, is the fuel for the bacteria. The probiotics are the bacteria themselves. And then the postbiotics are the things that the bacteria produce once they've had a really nice meal of that prebiotic, whatever that might be that you've put in there for them. And the postbiotics here, this is where the magic happens. So we've got things like short chain fatty acids being produced there, in particular molecules such as butyrate, which is really highly anti-inflammatory. It's been shown to be really beneficial, particularly in intestinal diseases like inflammatory bowel disease. It has an impact on your satiety, so that's how full you feel. So it actually messages to the brain, can communicate with the brain, and which then stops the hunger hormone being produced. Butyrate also has been shown to help increase the rate that we metabolize fat throughout the body. And lower rates of that short chain fatty acid have been shown to be linked to obesity and type 2 diabetes. So it's certainly something that we think, yeah, we definitely want to be increasing that. So the food that we want to get them, I've got them listed here: leeks, garlic, onion, asparagus, artichoke. Seaweeds in particular is an interesting one, not something that people commonly put into their diet, but they're really beneficial. They also have a particular compound in them called fucoidins that is antiviral, and seaweeds also help to encourage the production of the barrier in the gut. So it just helps again to modulate that communication, keep the conversation that's going on between the microbiome and the immune system at the right level, and stop them overacting or not talking to each other enough. The probiotics, we can naturally support those by you only need a small amount per day. So you're even just having a tablespoon a day of things like sauerkraut, kefir, kombucha, tempeh. Natural yogurt will have some, but it won't have quite as many as the other kinds that are listed there. Or you can support them with just a probiotic supplement themselves, which is putting the bacteria in. So that gives you a little bit of a simplifying it out as much as I possibly can to how we create these amazing postbiotics. So here we come on to the big bit of our immunity. How do we actually support these from a nutritional perspective? Because diet is the absolute foundation of our immunity. If you think about the fact that everything you eat is broken down by the body and it forms its various tissues and cells. I was actually at a seminar yesterday where they quoted a fact which totally blew my mind when I read it and sort of put it in perspective, saying the body you make new cells, you make 25 million new cells every second. So you just think about that for a moment and you think, wow, that's incredible, isn't it? And how do we make those cells? We make them from the ingredients that we are basically providing with our body, providing our body through the food that we eat, through what we're ingesting, our drinks. So if you're lacking in particular things, we're not just even just on the immune side, but anything, when we're looking at all the different processes that go on in the body, you can see how things can very quickly start to go wrong. It's a little bit like a domino effect where you've taken one of the dominoes out and the run just doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't work as well as it might do. We've got a production line where somebody's gone on holiday and we haven't replaced that worker, and suddenly, you know, the product at the end of the line might not look quite as good as you might have wanted it to look. So we're continually regenerating. We see that in our skin, and internally we're regenerating those cells, and particularly in our gastrointestinal lining. Between every sort of 2 to 5 days, you'll have a whole new lining there, which is amazing when you think about it. And again, that is coming entirely from all the different compounds that we are putting in our body. And if we don't provide it, the body is going to break down other tissues to actually get what it needs and create those. So we don't want to be putting ourselves in a position where that has to happen. So let's talk about some of these vitamins. Vitamin C, I'm sure you've come across as always touted as the holy grail of immune health. And it is incredibly beneficial. It has been shown to shorten the duration of a cold and also the severity of the cold. But the key is that you need to take it in a high enough amount earlier on enough. So you need to be having at least about 200 milligrams of vitamin C for that to have a beneficial effect. So when we're thinking about how that relates to what people would say is an RDA for vitamin C, that's much more, because those sort of measures, and I'm sure Dr. Dhesi will say, are really, really there about measuring for disease and preventing disease. So that's about stopping scurvy. It's not about making you really healthy and feel great. Things like peppers, oranges, kiwis. Actually, a red pepper here will give you about 2.5 times as much vitamin C as an orange would. And berries are also great. Black currants are amazing. Appreciate they're not very readily available at this time of year, though. So things to think about when vitamin C will get depleted. That is going to be particularly if you're very stressed, you will have lower levels of vitamin C. If you've just been through surgery, we've had some burns, because we need vitamin C for tissue repair. It's one of the precursors to making collagen. So our body will then use up those resources really, really quickly. It's also a substance we don't store it in the body. Unfortunately, we're one of the few mammals that has lost the ability to synthesize vitamin C, so we have to get it through our diet, and it is water soluble, so we lose it very readily as well. So you will be on a daily basis, it will be flushing through your system. One thing to bear in mind, if it is something that you already do take, your body will only actually absorb about 500 to 600 milligrams of vitamin C. So if you're taking a 1,000 milligram vitamin C tablet, you're actually putting half of it down the toilet, literally, so to speak. And you're much better sort of taking smaller doses across the day to get a more beneficial effect. Things also, medications as well, to bear in mind. These sort of things we don't often think about, but they interact with the nutrients and they will lower the amounts of the nutrients or increase your need for those nutrients. So things like the contraceptive pill and corticosteroids will decrease the uptake of vitamin C in your body. Okay. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually more like a steroid hormone than a vitamin itself, and it's also one of the few things that is hard to come by in food alone. We make it through our skin when the sun is out, which unfortunately in the UK is not that often, and also because of our latitude, longitude. I always get this the wrong way around, but how far north we are, we only get adequate sunlight, the angle of the sun onto our skin between around April to September each year. So after those times, you'll be better off thinking about, can I supplement for this? How can I optimize this in my diet? Because it's it's a real key constituent of your immune health. And this time of year is actually a perfect time to think about testing yourself. So you can see whether you've had good levels going into winter and you're setting yourself up as the best as possible to get through the winter with good levels. But it reduces inflammation. It's been shown to reduce the risk of respiratory infections. It also has a role in how your friendly bacteria colonize in your microbiome. And one thing to bear in mind is vitamin D, has to work in tandem with vitamin A. So we often think of these things as sort of individual silos, but really all of these work together in synergy. Vitamin D in particular has to work with vitamin A, otherwise you can't get it into the cells. Okay, so if you're a little bit depleted in your vitamin A levels, or you have a diet that is very low in vitamin A, that might be something to think about. If you also take the medication metformin, that's known to reduce vitamin D levels. So for diabetics, it's something to think about there too. Right, vitamin B6. This one, not something, again, you really think about. It's around in quite a lot of foods, but it's associated with lower immune function. And if you have low levels, it's been shown that you'll get a higher likelihood of having a viral infection. It helps increase all your white blood cells, but this is something that will be depleted if you are a big tea drinker, big coffee drinker, or, I'm sorry to say it this time of year, but if you are a big alcohol drinker, you will deplete your levels of vitamin B6. If you are also taking HRT or estrogen based medications like the contraceptive pill, that will significantly reduce vitamin B6 levels. So again, something to think about there. Vitamin A, as I mentioned, works together with vitamin D to help get the vitamin D into your body. Vitamin A is really important as the first line of defense in your body. It helps with all those mucous membranes that Dr. Dhesi was talking about that capture all those pathogens that we might be inhaling as we're sitting on a busy train, wherever we're going. And it helps protect our innate immunity. It helps manage the barrier in our intestinal lining. So again, helps manage that level of crosstalk that's going on between the microbiome and the immune system and keeping that at the right level. It increases the amounts of antibodies that we produce. And it also is involved in breaking down alcohol. So if you are drinking a lot of alcohol at this time of year, you will be using up your vitamin A stores. So something to think about. So often you can see it with people sometimes maybe struggling with eyesight as well, thinking about if you are a big alcohol drinker, something to bear in mind that your vitamin A may be a little bit depleted, not immune related, but another little side there. That one is another one that's depleted by the contraceptive pill, so something to bear in mind there too. Vitamin A, vitamin E, the last of the vitamins here, an amazing antioxidant vitamin, and this one is great at clearing up all our viral debris. It helps produce something called our phagocytes, which are a little bit like the Pac-Man cells that go around and clean up things, and also, parts of our own body and our own cells that are past their sell-by date, which are all part of the immune system, making sure we're getting rid of those things. It helps producing certain immune cells called T cells. It's anti-inflammatory as well. And we often see that people that have high toxin exposure, live in very polluted environments, or are smokers, may suffer from lower levels of vitamin E because it's such a potent antioxidant. Your body will rapidly be using that up to help in those redox reactions, getting rid of that. So our two minerals that we've got here are zinc and selenium. Now, zinc is a really important antioxidant. It's also anti-inflammatory, helps to lower the inflammatory messages in the immune system, and it inhibits viral replication. So one little tip I've got for you is I always keep in my cupboard some zinc lozenges. They can be really helpful at the first sign of a bit of a scratchy throat. So if you keep those in your mouth and just hold them for like 20 minutes, they will help stop any viral replication that might be going in from an incoming infection. And you have to do that a few times a day, and that can potentially help at the beginning of an illness to keep that at bay. This is also needed, excuse me, for the formation of an enzyme that breaks down alcohol together with vitamin A. So the zinc and the A are ones that you will be at this time of year, when there's lots of parties going on, ones to think about, that actually those will be depleted, because the alcohol then has to be metabolized and broken down and eliminated from the body, and your body will be using up your zinc and vitamin A stores to do that. Okay. You also don't have much ability to store this in the body, unfortunately, so we do need to be thinking about getting in as much from our diet as possible. Got a little picture here. Oysters are by far and away the biggest source of zinc. Other seafoods are good, as well as meat, tofu, lentils, shiitake, mushrooms are actually quite good, and pumpkin seeds. So you're going to see lower levels in people that are taking the contraceptive pill again, corticosteroids, proton pump inhibitors, which are things like omeprazole, lansoprazole, those sort of things that reduce acid in the stomach, and ACE inhibitors, beta blockers. There's quite a few medications that can interfere with how we take up zinc into our body. So worth thinking about those if any of those apply to you. And the last one we've got here is selenium. Now, selenium is an amazing mineral that nobody ever really talks about or thinks about. It's a little bit like a Goldilocks one. So it's got this zone where it doesn't want to be too low, but equally doesn't want to be too high. So it's quite a narrow range for it. And the best place to find selenium is in Brazil nuts. But I will caveat that with saying that you need to get the Brazil nuts from Brazil, because it's only in the nut because of the levels that are in the soil. And there's certain places in the world that are very depleted, such as China. So if you are getting your Brazil nuts, which are a lot of them now come from China, they will not have selenium in them. And you almost need to think of it as a bit like a supplement, where you are taking like 2 or 3 is sufficient on a daily basis. So it's really, you don't want to be overdoing it. So don't go out and go, oh, Tina said this was great, I'm going to eat a whole bag of Brazil nuts every day. That's no, please don't do that. But it's a really, really important antioxidant. It actually is part of the process of making one of the master antioxidants that we've got in our bodies, called glutathione peroxidase. So it's a really important cofactor in that. It helps in producing immune cells. It helps in producing antibodies. If you are low in selenium, you're much more likely to have viruses that are unable to replicate within the body at a higher rate. So that's been shown. So, and there was some really interesting research that came out showing that, particularly during COVID, areas of the world that were very depleted in selenium had higher rates of COVID, or worse COVID outcomes, which was an interesting correlation. That one, again, reduced by things like corticosteroids and the contraceptive pill. So bear that in mind if that is something that is applicable to you. We're going to move on now to, and the one thing I should add here is, I appreciate at this time of year that it's not always going to be possible to get all of those through a lovely seasonal diet. So sometimes looking towards supplements can be helpful in the short term. I'm not suggesting that everybody should be taking supplements at all, but it's just that sense of, okay, I know I've just been ill, I'm really depleted, or I'm going through a really stressful period, I've just had some surgery, or whatever it might be, and you might need to support yourself a little bit better. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Thanks, Tina. So I don't know what to do actually. Maybe an NHS practice. So I just set up a buffet in the in the clinic, but I don't think that'll go too well with the practice manager or in our clinic either. But that was enlightening. I mean, so much information there. The recording will be available. So if you feel that you didn't absorb it all, then, no pun intended, then it will be available on replay. So chronic stress is something that a lot of people suffer with, and sometimes it's that silent stress as well. It's something that we don't really give into. We know it's there, it's impacting on our lives. But the problem with stress and chronic stress is it results in the rise or prolonged rise in a hormone called cortisol. Now, cortisol is not always a bad thing. We need cortisol. For example, we have a spike of cortisol first thing in the morning. It's what gets us out of bed. We have cortisol rising in the afternoon again in kind of a rhythm, which makes us more alert, more awake. But unfortunately, when we are experiencing stress, whether that's environmental stress or internal stress, then it leads to a rise in cortisol. And then that leads to a rise in inflammation in the body. So when it's chronic, it starts to disrupt the immune system. And that is an overproduction of inflammatory markers or inflammatory messengers in the body, things like cytokines. And that's where autoimmune problems can arise. So things that where the immune system can't differentiate between friend or foe, and we start to see a rise in chronic conditions like, for example, thyroid disease, diabetes. These are all consequences of a rise in inflammation and prolonged stress, and obviously cortisol is one of the culprits there. What we don't want is an impaired response in immune communication. So we were discussing, or Tina was discussing, how in terms of our gut microbiome and the immune system, they sit very close together. You can start to understand now that if there's a disruption in that communication, it starts to affect how the immune cells communicate. Remember, they're also communicating with the byproducts of what our gut microbiome is producing. So we're starting to see a picture where that if there's a disruption in our own immune system, it doesn't really know what it's doing. It's getting confused, it's getting a bit chaotic. And then we have a disruption in our microbiome, the bacteria, the friendly bacteria, and they're producing byproducts that aren't necessarily the right messages. We start to get a chaotic picture, and then that leads to a miscommunication. And again, I'm going to bring up autoimmune conditions like thyroid disease, arthritis, chronic conditions, which are resulting as a consequence of lack of communication. I mean, look, if we're just at home and we're not talking to each other in the right way, that just leads to chaos in itself. So imagine that happening internally as well. We see a rise in stress, especially after surgery, delayed wound healing, and a simple aspect, in the winter when, for example, you're not getting enough vitamin D, you're not enough vitamin C, you're feeling low, and we see this in clinic where patients perhaps doing a little bit of self-care by popping spots or picking at things on their skin, and then they come in and they say they're messaging me, they're saying to me that it's taking a lot longer for these superficial skin problems to heal. And that's because there is a underlying chronic stress happening, and it becomes even more serious when we have conditions post-surgery. For example, wound healing, it takes a lot longer. The stress itself of having surgery results in a slower healing process, which is why the nutrient factors that Tina was discussing are so important. I was making a joke about having a buffet in clinic. Having just small amounts of those things, for example, Brazil nuts from Brazil, I paid attention to that, Tina, can help to bring us back into balance. It's not about accelerating things. It's not about enhancing it. It's basically bringing back our body's natural way of healing. Susceptibility to illness. This is a common question. Why is it that towards the end of towards the beginning of holidays, that's when I fall unwell, Dr. Dhesi or Sunny? Why is it I'm getting unwell then? It's because it's when you're most susceptible. You're just allowing vulnerabilities to creep in, but that stress that you've been experiencing, those weeks in advance of stress, that's what causes it. It's not the fact that the holidays have started, that's why you're getting unwell. So cortisol can increase vulnerability to infections by lowering the number of white blood cells. So those T cells, those phagocytes that Tina was mentioning, all those different variety of white blood cells, it lowers them. And as I've mentioned before, is a disruption of the gut microbiome. Sorry, Tina.
Sorry, no.
Go ahead, exercise.
This is you.
This is me. So I think swiftly moving on to exercise. I hear this a lot. And I as someone who does medical screenings where I have more time to discuss exercise, we probably don't do enough, but we don't realize that we just have to do a little bit of it every day. Just 10 minutes to 30 minutes can promote good circulation. It helps substances in the immune system, so the white blood cells, the lymph, circulate through the body more rapidly, and it can improve the detection and neutralization of pathogens. Our antibodies and the cytokines and the white blood cells, they need to circulate through our bloodstream and the lymph system. And the only way the way we can enhance that is by exercising. Stress reduction, lower stress hormones, reducing the burden on the immune system. You may not feel so great when you're exercising, but the post-exercise benefit, it's so beneficial to your immune system. The respiratory flush, which means the deep breathing that occurs during exercise, the increased breathing rate, it actually does help to flush out bacteria out of lungs and airways. One of the things we see is that when it's colder, you're not less likely to go out for a run or go for a walk. You don't have to run, you can just walk. We're not breathing enough, and that's where we get a susceptibility to chest infections or upper respiratory tract infections. A temporary elevation in body temperature. I'm not talking about going and doing hot yoga anywhere. I'm just talking about increasing that body temperature can help to prevent bacterial growth and helps the body fight infection. Our body does that naturally. We know that's what a temperature is. It's our body's way of reducing the friendly environment that bacteria find themselves in by increasing the temperature up to past 38. It prevents bacterial growth. Exercise, prevention of weight gain, prevention of obesity. It's sometimes a touchy subject, but what an increase in fat does, or increase in fat cells does, and unfortunately it gets to a point where those fat cells themselves are producing bad inflammatory mediators, and that it disrupts our immune system. And then, leading on nicely, it improves gut health. It alters the diversity of our gut microbiome in a positive way, and those are the benefits of exercise.
And now we come on to the dreaded sugar. So the R of our winter is to reduce sugar. So kind of got it in there somewhere. So I know it's hard and it's horrible to hear it, but unfortunately, because I know sugar is everywhere at this time of year, but it has a really negative impact on your immune system. It effectively damages the proteins on the outside of your immune cells, which are really important for the immune system to be able to communicate with each other. So it's messaging. There's all these different kinds of cells that we've talked about, and all different messengers, cytokines, interleukins, these different things that go on to make sure that our responses are correct. Now, if you're damaging those proteins, you can imagine the outcome is basically that you're just not going to have as well, your immune system is just not going to function as well as it possibly could. There's a process, so by glycation, those are damaged. So we want to try and reduce that as much as possible. It also, sugar and high blood glucose contributes to low-grade inflammation. And as that increases and we're just exposed to chronic inflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation in the body is one of the underlying risk factors for most kinds of chronic disease, unfortunately. So ways to reduce sugar and how to stop that big spike. So if you were to eat a teaspoon of sugar and I measured or Dr. Dhesi measured your blood glucose afterwards, we'd see a big spike. And what we want to do is move that big spike into a nice little mound, a nice gentle hillock, so that it's not having such a negative impact on your blood vessels. It's a little bit, I liken it a little bit to taking sandpaper to the inside of your blood vessels. When you've got really high blood glucose, it actually damages the insides of those veins. You don't want that to be happening. So we want to bring that down as much as possible. So mixing it with healthy fats and proteins and lots of fiber is the best thing to do. So every time you're having carbohydrates, I always think about partnering them with some kind of fat. So even if you're having an apple, so you've got those lovely natural sugars in there, but just have it with a handful of almonds as well. So that's those fats and the proteins within the almonds are going to help slow down the release of the glucose into the bloodstream and lessen that spike. So we're getting a nice gentle hill. So there's a couple of, I'm not going to go through this full list because I know we're a little bit tight on time now, but we've got some options here, just some ideas for you. I'm not saying go away and you need to do this. I'm just saying maybe there might be a few things there that you could try. Rather than the sugar-loaded cocktail, maybe try some soda with a spirit, if you're going to go for the alcohol, think about sparkling water with some lovely fresh ginger or lemon and lime instead of sugary drinks. Think about natural ways that you could maybe make a hot chocolate alternative that's with raw cacao, so you've got those lovely polyphenols in there that are going to be beneficial for you, using some almond milk that's got a little bit more protein, and the coconut cream with the healthy fats. So that will really reduce the sugar from a shop bought hot chocolate, for example. Okay, so we're going to move now on to our S, which is sleep.
So this was me. I think we all can agree we don't get enough of it. So at the risk of going on all night with the presentation and me talking too much, let's get to it. So sleep. So we spoke about T cells. So T cells are one of the white blood cells that help to kill bacteria and viruses. Neutrophils are the ones that kill bacteria, but improves the functionality of T cells. So these are integral to the body's immune response. And so sleep is that time when your immune system, especially the white blood cells, can do their job. Sleep helps to increase production of cytokines, and these are proteins that can target infection, inflammation. Cytokines can bind to bacteria and viruses, which then can help the immune system identify what needs to be removed. Improved recovery. I think this is almost sort of common sense, but it needs to be said out loud. So during sleep, the immune system releases proteins, as I said, called cytokines, and that promotes sleep. And also we need that time to recover so that there's a bit of redundancy in our system. We know that if you're having a lack of sleep, you wake up tired, that puts you under chronic stress. And we've already spoken about how stress leads to then low-grade inflammation, which then leads on to problems. Sleep can help to reduce the production of stress hormones, as I just mentioned. And amazingly, sleep also helps the immune system memory to reorganize itself and remember pathogens. So, and having sleep helps us improve the response to vaccines. So I'm not necessarily saying that there's always controversy of vaccines, and we won't go into that today, but sleep is one of those things where it improves our memory of disease. And it's also an opportunity to repair and regenerate immune cells as well. As Tina was saying, that skin cells can take up to 28 to 32 days to renew, but internal cells are renewing all the time, which is why sleep is so important.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're all on for an early night now, if we finish this in time. Okay, so the eighth of our safe is a little bit of a creative way to get in antioxidants, fungi, and extracts. Okay, so what does this actually mean? It all sounds a little bit exotic here, doesn't it? So that is all about your phytonutrients. So we're getting into the plant compounds here. So all these amazing colors that we see in these different fruits and vegetables that we've got here, each different color brings a different phytonutrient or a different phytochemical with it, and each of them have different benefits on our system. They are anti-inflammatory, and they also have antimicrobial effects. You find that this is why we'll always hear nutritionists going on about eating the rainbow. This is why. This is what it means. It's about getting as much plant diversity, as many of these different colors, and all these amazing antioxidant effects into your body. Because I think of them as like they're a little bit like the cleanup crew that I think of, especially after you've had a virus. If you have been ill, these are really, really important to go around clearing up and helping with that cleanup operation that needs to happen afterwards, all that sort of post-viral debris that's left there after your body's just gone through this battle process. So quite a simplistic way of thinking about it, but other ones that are really good to think about are, if you look in your spice cabinet and your herbs and spices, that's a great place to start with some of these as well, because you've got some really potent antimicrobials and powerful antioxidants there, things like ginger, garlic, turmeric in particular. I mean, turmeric, I think now if you go and do a medical search on it, it's got something like over 25,000 pieces of research showing the benefits. Well, not necessarily showing the benefits, but research into turmeric. So it's an incredibly potent anti-inflammatory in particular. It also helps do something, it produces something called BDNF, which if anybody's into neurology and likes a bit of brain chemistry, BDNF is a little bit like fertilizer for your brain. It's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and turmeric has been shown to increase that, which increases the production of brain cells. And who doesn't want a few new brain cells? I mean, come on. So that is, again, it's one of its myriad number of benefits that come along with turmeric. So fungi, this is all about our mushrooms here. So, and mushrooms, I'm really talking about the medicinal mushrooms in particular. Now, these have been used for thousands of years in many cultures. In Japan, for example, they're one of the main treatments in oncology, medicinal mushrooms, alongside their traditional allopathic therapies. It's really interesting, and there's a lot of research now on the benefits of medicinal mushrooms alongside chemotherapy. It's a really interesting area, and the research is just sort of catching up with that. So the ones you can eat are things like shiitake and maitake. Shiitake you can find pretty readily in the supermarket. Maitake, less so. If you've got a good farmer's market near you, you might be lucky. I think if you live near Laxton, there's a great company there called the Tiny Fungi Co. that grow a lot of these more exotic mushrooms and make extracts and things from them. It's a good one to look at. And then other things like reishi, chaga, turkey tail, those are ones that you'll get more via capsule or in extract form. Those are the ways that you could get those into your diet, but they are incredibly powerful. They have a lot of polysaccharides, things called beta glucans in them, and triterpenes, which exhibit a lot of what we call immune modulating effects. So they effectively tell your immune system, actually, oh, we need you to pick up now, or we actually need you to calm down now. So particularly if you've got an autoimmune condition, they can be really, really helpful because they help to calm down and manage how the immune system works, rather than just overreacting, which we don't necessarily want, particularly if somebody has a predisposition to autoimmune. Extracts, these are things like echinacea and elderberry. So elderberry has been shown to stop viral replication. So elderberry extract is something that's quite nice to just have as a tincture, and you can add if you've got the first sign of illness. Echinacea similarly works better when it's taken at the first sign of illness, and it helps to increase the production of white blood cells. Okay. So I hear you say, this all sounds fantastic, but what do I do? How do I actually make any of this work in a real life situation? So there's a couple of ideas here. I'll just whiz through a couple of them quickly. So think about things like drinks. Maybe you could start your day with some lovely fresh grated ginger and some lemon, which would be a lovely way to help support your liver as well, a little bit of a detoxification process, especially if we've been indulging in a bit more alcohol and those kind of things, and you're getting all those lovely beneficial properties from the ginger, or the ginger rolls in there too. Try some other herbal teas. Green tea in particular is really beneficial with all the ECGCs that you get in there. If you want to boost it even further, have a go with matcha if you're brave enough, where you're actually going to ingest all the plant proteins themselves, because you're taking that in a very finely ground powder, so you'll actually ingest all of it rather than just having it in a tea bag. Think about adding into your breakfast. How can you make it? How can you maximize what you're having there? If you're just having a bowl of porridge, put in some ground flax seeds into that. It's going to be really fiber rich. That's really going to feed that microbiome, which in turn is going to help your immune health. It's also got some really beneficial omega-3s in there. Think about putting lots of berries with all the different vitamin C, different things that you've got in there, the polyphenols. Think about a lovely protein-rich breakfast that might have some eggs, some sauteed greens. That's a lovely way of getting turmeric in, because turmeric, while it's amazing, isn't necessarily very well absorbed by the body. So if you want to max out on how you take up the turmeric, you need to have it with fat, and you need to have it with black pepper. So if you put black pepper with it, it will increase the absorption rate by about 2,000 times, amazingly. So if you like a turmeric latte, put a little bit of black pepper into the latte. Doesn't need to be loads, but just enough, because that will actually make sure that your body's taking in all of that turmeric rather than it being processed out. Things like dinner, think about your dinner plate, the proportions of the plate, maybe potentially having almost half the plate being vegetables, different kinds of vegetables, and your meat and your fish and your protein element more as a side part of it. Use as much garlic as you can, because it's got some great antimicrobial properties, and try and get as much raw garlic in there as you can if you want to still be sociable though. But bear that in mind, swapping out all the processed carbohydrates and the refined grains for things like the whole grains. Again, that's going to boost your fiber. That's going to boost all those lovely B vitamins that are helpful. And then thinking about those snacks and how we can just reduce the sugar levels down, or just modulate how that effect is happening in the body. So we're also reducing the impact of glycation there that's going on. So a quick little recipe for you here, which is very quick to make. It's very easy. It takes about 25 minutes. The secret ingredient here, which is going to give you lots of lovely immune boosting and immune modulating compounds, is reishi mushroom. Now, it's probably not a mushroom that many of you have ever come across before, and it's not one that you can eat fresh. So you can find it online. So I tend to buy it as dry slices. You can find that online. And what you need to do is you need to cook it in this soup for about 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes. So then it will start to release all the really beneficial triterpenes and beta glucans that are in there that are going to help support all those lovely immune cells. And you've got all these amazing flavors. You've got the turmeric in there, you've got the ginger, you've also got all of the shiitake mushrooms in there, which are again immune enhancing. And you don't need a lot of these mushrooms. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I think the research seems to show that only between 5 to 10 grams a day of shiitake mushroom would have an immune enhancing effect on the body. Okay, so that's not a lot. If you were to measure that out, it's only going to be a couple of mushrooms. But that's not just once a month, that's trying to include them regularly in your diet. So finding ways that you could throw them into a stir fry, put them into a soup, different things that you could do with them, mix them into your scrambled eggs in the morning, whatever it might be. Okay, now you will get that on the replay. If you want a copy, send me an email at the end, and send me an email and I can send you over a copy of that recipe as well if it's easier. All right. So hopefully over the course of those slides, we've made it through our 8 pillars. I'm hoping that we've given you some good ideas for how you can support yourself. I think one of the key things I would say is, as with any kind of change, just try to bring things in slowly. Do not go away and go, right, Tina and Dr. Dhesi have said, right, I need to do all of these different things and try and implement them in the next week, because what will happen generally is you'll get a bit overwhelmed, and within a week, you might have given up of all of it and thrown it all in the bin and gone, I'm just not bothering with that, it's just too much. So best thing to do is try and maybe take half an hour, whether it's half an hour after this or at some other point, and just think, oh, Mindful Monday, whenever it is, I'm going to have a think about what I can bring into my life. I'm going to have a think about what I might be able to change, whether that's from a dietary perspective or a lifestyle perspective. And then whether it's 1, 2, or 3 things that week, and then the following week do the same, and just try and build on that. And then you'll be amazed, in the end of a month, you've brought in at least 4 changes that are going to be hugely beneficial to your overall health and well-being. And then hopefully those habits will be able to stick. So it's just sort of stacking those very gradually. Don't go in heavy-handed and go, I need to do all of this at once, but just take a gradual approach, because we're all here for a long time, and our health is about, it's a long-term game here. But if you do feel that you need to support yourself in the short term, I've put some suggested supplements together here that are a really good place to start. And the one thing I would say about supplements with anything is be very, very careful, because this is not a well-regulated area, and you will be able to find anything online on Amazon. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good. It doesn't necessarily mean it's got good levels of the nutrients that you need, and it usually comes along with a lot of additives, chemicals, sweeteners, flavorings, and different things that you don't want. So while you're adding in all this good stuff from one side, what we don't want to be doing is taking in a load of rubbish that our body then needs to process and detoxify and eliminate at the same time, because you're giving with one hand and taking away with the other at the same time. So think about a really good source. Now, Cytoplan, the company I've got here, they are a very reputable manufacturer. They've been around for a long time. They're also a leader in something called food form supplements, which is where the nutrients are made in a much more bioactive form, where they're a whole food. So one of them I put here, which is a vitamin C. So this is a lovely vitamin C complex. It's called Cherry C. It's actually made from something called acerola cherries. So acerola cherries are one of the richest sources of vitamin C around. So you're getting that in a natural form, together with a load of other phytonutrients that are all in that lovely synergy that work together, and some minerals in there as well. So it's a really nice natural way of sort of upping your vitamin C at this time of year. Now, on the microbiome side, we've got a nice probiotic complex here, which, when we think back to that little bit of maths that we did earlier, we talked about our pre and our pro, getting to our post. So the Phosphodophyllus, sounds a bit hard to say, but it's phos basically because it's fructooligosaccharides, which is a prebiotic. So you've got the food in there for the bacteria, and you've also got the bacteria themselves. So that's a really nice combination that's providing everything you need. Again, could be a nice sort of form of immune support for you. I've also put on there an immune multivitamin that's covering all those vitamins and minerals that we talked about earlier, as well as the beta glucans, which you get from the mushrooms. So that's a really nice complex. If you are interested in any of those, there is a 35% one-time discount that I can give to you, that I can make available to you. So just pop me an email over to hello@tinahancocks.com, and I can send you the code to apply that. Even if you just want one of them, you can just apply that. Or if you feel that, oh, actually, there's a few things I need to stock up on at this time of year, it's a great discount, and you can take advantage of it and actually get a few other things if there's anything else that you do need for your family at the same time. So that's something that's there for you. And then I'm going to be hopefully working with people on a one-to-one basis later next year, and this is something I'm not obviously focusing on the supplements, but supplements are one part of the thing that we can do when we're looking at unique sort of bespoke nutrition plans that work alongside dietary and lifestyle changes with a lot of functional medicine testing. So that's why it's always great to work alongside somebody like Dr. Dhesi, who is able to do the testing, because that is a fundamental part of the work that I will do to try and identify deficiencies and things like that. So if a more naturopathic approach and nutrition sounds like something you're interested in, pop over to my website, have a look, and drop me an email, and I can get in touch with you when there's appointments available in the future.
That's great, Tina. And I just reiterate what you said, just a 1% change every week can make a significant, it's 4% after 4 weeks. And also, and if you could do the maths, but just a little change every week makes such a massive impact, rather than what I would do in the past is leave this presentation, go and try and make the soup, make a mess in the kitchen, and then lose a lot of sleep. So optimizing your health. So I have a clinic in Oakham in Rutland, and we do provide now bespoke blood testing. So one of the more bespoke and kind of one-to-one process that we work with, and learning so much from Tina about the naturopathic approach, is that my goal is that as an NHS doctor as well, we can do so much on the NHS, but sometimes that process of trying to one size fits all doesn't work. And so we can provide, or I can provide, a more targeted approach. One of the services that we offer is we cover 48 key biomarkers. So biomarkers are things that help us to identify health issues. So, for example, vitamin D that we've spoken about, vitamin B12 levels, folate levels, your liver function, your kidney function. My goal is that if we can't get it elsewhere, then I'm here in clinic to provide that holistic and supportive aspect, and through private GP consultation. So what I say to a lot of my patients, those of you who are watching, is that I'm always thinking of the future. So I'm always thinking 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And what we want to do is head off those chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and arthritis, things that do worry us, but we kind of push to one side. It's these small changes that we make now, and a way of measuring them through blood testing allows us to make a difference later on. So if you are interested, then we're contactable via email, information@vysana.com, and we also have a landline as well, or check out the website. But Tina, I think we've gone over. I think we don't want people to lose sleep, so we've gone over. So let's finish up. Do you want to finish up? Have the last word?
Well, I was just saying, I think everyone knows what we've covered. So it's all about a 360 approach. approach things in a stepwise manner. Think about, be ready at the first sign of illness. And if there are any things that we can help you with, please do contact either Dr. Dhesi or me if you've got any queries about supplements, nutrition, like a little bit more information. As you could probably hear, this is something that we could talk about for hours. So I'm sorry that we've kept you a little bit longer than an hour. I really hope you found it useful and informative, and that there are some things from there that you can take away and support yourselves with. If you have got any questions, please do pop them down. And
should we stay on for a few more minutes?
If anyone wants to go,
we can stay on, and we can answer some questions for a few minutes. So thanks, Viv, very much for watching. Viv is a prescribing pharmacist who I work with as a colleague, roped him into coming onto the presentation. So no questions in the chat that I can see. But we have had a few thanks for a great presentation. I think it was, brilliantly informative, a completely different view. No questions yet. So Nick has kindly said that, yeah, thanks for both. Could listen for hours. We can arrange it, Nick.
I think that's Mary. I think I know who Nick is, yeah.
Okay.
No, that's great. So as I said, if there are any questions, or suddenly afterwards, and if people are watching this on replay, obviously, and weren't able to put something in, and if people are watching it on replay and they're able to put us on double speed, then even better, because you get rid of us more quickly, then please just send us an email and we will happily get back to you as best as we can. And also, if there are any other topics that you feel that might be helpful, if you would like these kind of discussions and you would like to hear from us again in the future, do let us know. Anything else you want to say, Sonny?
No, that's all. I think you said it all. I think what we'll do is we'll end this now. Thanks everyone for joining us, and those who are watching the replay, like I said, like Tina said, contact us. So yeah, thanks very much.